I'm Mara Ellison, 36 years old, and I've been invisible my entire life. By design at first. But tonight, something in me begins to crack. My mother, Eloise, is turning 60, and you would think it was the Queen of France's coronation. The ballroom glows in candlelight and crystal. A string quartet plays something vaguely classical near the front windows, their notes floating above the clink of wine glasses and curated laughter. People glide between marble columns, their silk and satin whispering secrets I was never meant to hear. I check the third catering station by the French doors, noting that the oysters are running low. "Refill tray 9, I whisper to the nearest server. He nods, disappears. I cross to the lighting console near the DJ booth, adjusting the dimmers slightly. Too bright near the cake, Eloise will hate that in photos. Everything must be soft, flattering, timeless. "You always throw the best parties," a woman says behind me. She's holding a gold-rimmed champagne flute, her manicured hand gesturing to the floral arrangements, the table runners, the string lights arcing like stars above the dance floor. "You must be exhausted, Eloise." I smile before she turns to face me, and when she does, the change in her expression is so practiced I almost admire it. "Oh," she says, "you're not, well, please tell your mother it's divine." "I will," I reply with a nod, even though I won't. I disappear into the kitchen, the one room in this venue that hasn't been designed for photos. It's quieter here, cooler. I exhale slowly and pull out my phone, opening the checklist I've been perfecting for the past 6 weeks. Lighting. Check. Bar. Check. Playlist. Running smoothly. Gift table. Still collecting shiny envelopes and token wine sets. Cake. Frosting intact. Moments like this make me wish I smoked. At least then I'd have something to do with my hands. Instead, I refill my water glass, press it to my lips, and let the silence wrap around me. This is how it always is. I organize. I adjust. I disappear. Out in the main room, my mother glides between conversations like an ice skater on performance night. Her laughter is perfectly timed, her compliments barbed just enough to entertain. I watch her through the window that separates the kitchen from the bar. The sequins on her gown catch the light like a disco ball. Everyone adores her. "She's magic," someone says. I nod again. She is. But I wonder if I vanished right now, would anyone notice? Or would the ice sculpture just melt, the glasses refill themselves, and Eloise Ellison continue to sparkle under lights I strung, in a room I built, on a night that never had my name on it? No one sees the glue, just the glitter. I keep my smile on until the kitchen door swings shut behind me again. Then I let it fall. A server squeezes past me with a tray of empty wine glasses, and I flatten myself against the counter to make space, like I always do, always shrinking, always yielding. When the room is still again, I sink into a metal stool by the prep table and close my eyes. This isn't the first party I've managed for my mother, it's just the biggest. She's always loved celebrations. Especially the kind where she doesn't have to lift a finger. There was the garden party when she turned 50 and insisted on a whimsical yet formal theme. I was 26, juggling night shifts at the hospital and coordinating hydrangea deliveries from my car during lunch breaks. Then there was the impromptu engagement party for my cousin Sarah, thrown at our house, planned entirely by me, but presented as my mother's gift. Eloise accepted all the praise with a gracious nod, one manicured hand on my shoulder like a trophy. "You don't need credit," she said once when I asked her why she never mentioned my role. "People don't need to know who was behind the scenes, that's not the point." But it is, I think now, tracing the rim of my glass. It's always been the point. The flashbacks come in waves, like muscle memory. Me, age 17, skipping prom to take my brother to urgent care because he broke his wrist skateboarding and no one else could leave work. Me, 23, arguing with insurance reps over my father's medication coverage while mom was out with the bridge club. Me, 32, driving 3 hours back from a conference because mom forgot. She'd promised to pick up grandma from the hospital after her chemo. And always, always, as always. The same follow-up. "You're such a good daughter, Mara." That phrase should be engraved on my tombstone. You're such a good daughter. Which is code for, you don't ask for anything. You don't complain. You don't expect things. Sometimes I think I'm more reliable than the appliances in this house. I show up, I work, I stay quiet. The kitchen door swings open and I instinctively stand, straighten my spine, fix my face. But it's just a waiter, and he barely glances at me before grabbing a stack of napkins and disappearing again. I sit back down slowly. Somewhere deep in my phone is a photo from 10 years ago. Grandma and me, sitting on the back porch. I was 26. She was already shrinking, already so thin her cardigan hung like a curtain from her shoulders. But her smile was full. Her hands were warm when they held mine. "You do so much for this family," she'd said, voice raspy but certain. "Even if no one sees it, you make it run." She saw me. And now she's gone. I scroll through my phone until I find the picture. My throat tightens. I've spent my whole life proving I could carry it all. The calendar, the crises, the birthdays and the breakdowns. But maybe I carried too well. Maybe they thought I wanted to be invisible. Maybe they forgot I exist at all. When I finally return to the ballroom, the laughter hits me like perfume. Thick, artificial, impossible to ignore. Eloise is at the center of it, of course. She always is. She's holding court near the dessert table, a flute of champagne in one hand, the other resting lightly on some city councilman's arm as she tosses back her head and laughs. Not too loud, never too loud. Just enough to show she's having fun. Just enough to draw attention. She's mastered the art of presentation. Her hair is set in perfect waves, the exact platinum tone she's maintained since her early 50s. Her makeup, done professionally of course, softens her jawline and brightens her eyes, making her look like a vintage movie star. She is radiant. And every inch of it is designed. "Eloise?" Someone coos from the table closest to the dance floor. "I can't believe you're 60. What's your secret?" "Oh, I just keep busy," she says with a little wave. "Helps to have such a supportive family." I press my lips together and move toward the far end of the room, where I can blend into a group discussing stock portfolios and organic wine. She doesn't mean me. Her definition of supportive has always been conditional. Conditional on silence. On not embarrassing her. On keeping everything picture perfect, no cracks, no messy emotions, no real moments that might threaten her reputation as the woman who has it all together. "Do you know how it looks?" she once said when I cried in the car after a family dinner. "When you get like that? People worry. People talk. You have to learn how to hold it in." So I did. I learned to swallow every unsaid thing. Every time she forgot to introduce me. Every time she reworded my ideas as her own. Every time she told people the family pulled through a crisis as a team, when it was me, alone, driving back and forth from the hospital 3 nights a week. I watched her mask form over the years, watched her sculpt it out of compliments and control. She could make anyone love her, with just the right tone, just the right anecdote. Even when she was cruel, she was elegant about it. Once, when I was 12, she leaned down before a piano recital and said, "Don't slouch. It makes you look nervous, and you don't want people to feel sorry for you." I didn't even know I was nervous until she named it. After that, I couldn't unfeel it. Now, as she glides past me, she touches my arm briefly. "Mara, darling," she murmurs. "Champagne's low near the cake. Can you handle it?" I nod before I even think. And just like that, I'm backstage again. A ghost with a task. The daughter who does without asking. Who fixes without being seen. Who holds it all in so her mother can sparkle. 3 nights ago, I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by a blizzard of paper clippings, photos, and receipts that only I could ever make sense of. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of my desk lamp and the occasional shuffle of pages. I'd taken the week off from work under the vague excuse of personal time, but really, I needed space to build this one last thing. Something that wouldn't vanish into the background. Something she couldn't rephrase, redirect, or claim. The scrapbook started as a joke, at least, in my head. A tongue-in-cheek nod to the invisible labor of being everyone's emergency contact, errand runner, secret keeper. But the longer I worked on it, the more it became something else. Something real. Each page was a piece of me. The photo of me and Theo in the ER, both of us covered in his spilled grape slushy, after he tried to jump his bike off the curb at 8 years old and cracked his collarbone. No one remembered I was the one who carried him 3 blocks because mom was on a conference call. But I remembered. The page with printed screenshots of our family's shared care calendar. Mara's name next to every shift for grandma's chemo rides. Every grocery run. Every rescheduled doctor's appointment. I'd color-coded them once to make it look efficient. But looking back, all I saw was red. The handwritten grocery lists with Eloise's flourishes. No red grapes, only green, she once wrote. If not crisp, don't bother. I used to laugh at her specificity. Now I wondered how much of my life had been arranged around someone else's preferences. I included photos too, snapshots that would have gone forgotten. Me asleep on the couch with a bowl of soup half finished on my chest during flu season. Grandma's birthday, where I'm in the background lighting candles while everyone else sings. Christmas morning, the only one not holding a gift. I was behind the camera. Always behind the camera. But the heart of the scrapbook, the part that made me cry at 2 a.m. in pajama pants and mismatched socks, was the letter from Grandma. The last one she ever wrote me, in her shaky handwriting on floral stationery. My sweet Mara, it began. You carry the weight of this family with more grace than anyone sees. But I see you. I always have. And I want you to know, it's okay to be seen, you don't have to be the quiet one forever. I glued the letter onto the final page, no embellishments. Just her words and a dried petal from the hydrangeas she used to grow in her backyard. It felt sacred. Like the only part of the book I wasn't offering to Eloise. The rest, though, that was hers. Not to flatter her, not to celebrate her, but to confront her. To remind her. To say, you didn't carry this family alone. You didn't even carry it most of the time. I did. And tonight she was going to see it. Whether she wanted to or not. The folded index card is still in my clutch, warm now from the heat of my hand. I haven't let go of it since I walked into the venue. I run my thumb along the creased edge and glance out at the sea of well-dressed strangers raising their glasses to my mother, like she invented the concept of being admired. The speech isn't long. 90 seconds, tops. I timed it with a stopwatch like I was prepping for a TED Talk. But this isn't about applause or eloquence, it's a lifeline. A signal flare. I wrote it in my apartment 3 days ago, after taping the last page of the scrapbook shut. The words came quickly, but the meaning had been building for years. Good evening, I'll say. I know most of you are here to celebrate Eloise, and you should. She is magnetic, beautiful, and endlessly devoted to the people she loves. Pause for effect, smile. Easy. I practiced in the mirror. But tonight, I wanted to share something smaller. A different kind of story. One about the quiet things, the care calls, the late-night drives, the reminders that hold families together when no one's looking. And then I'll tell them about Grandma. About how she saw me. How, in the last months of her life, she asked me what I wanted for myself. I'll mention the foundation. How I'd like to start a small grant in her name to help caregivers who are supporting family members without recognition or resources. Nothing flashy. Just something real. Instead of gifts, I'll invite people to donate if they feel moved. That's it. That's the speech. Just a sliver of truth slipped into a room built on performance. A sliver is all I need. Because deep down, I don't want to ruin anything. I'm not here to steal the spotlight or make anyone uncomfortable. God knows, discomfort is a mortal sin in our family. But I do want something. To be heard, even just once. Not for managing the wine list. Not for picking up prescriptions. Not for remembering birthdays no one else tracks. I want to be heard for saying something that matters. When I practiced reading it aloud, I cried the first time. Not because of what it said, but because of how scared I was to say it. Because what if I finally speak and the room just keeps going? What if nothing changes? Or worse, what if everything does? I glanced down at the card again, the ink just slightly smudged from my grip. Tonight we celebrate the scene, it ends. But let's not forget the ones who kept the lights on when the party was over. That line still catches in my throat. It's almost time. I take a breath, tuck the card back into my clutch, and step toward the ballroom. Whatever happens, I'm going to say it. And for once, I won't disappear. She catches me just as I'm adjusting the volume on the mic stand. Mara, her voice sings out, like pearls clinking against crystal. What are you doing back here? I turn, swallowing the tension rising in my chest. Just checking the tech. Thought I might say a few words later. Brief, nothing formal. Eloise's smile doesn't flicker, but her eyes do. Just the smallest blink, the briefest pause. A microscopic crack in the mirror. Oh? She says, as if tasting the word. How? Thoughtful. I nod, trying to read the contours of her reaction. It's nothing big. Just something small for Grandma. And I hesitate. A gentle ask. Instead of gifts, I thought maybe people could donate to a caregiver's grant in her name. There's a beat of silence. The violins in the next room swell like a heartbeat trying too hard. Eloise steps forward, her heels not making a sound on the thick carpet, and lays a hand on my arm. It looks affectionate. From a distance, we're the picture of harmony, darling, she says lightly, voice dipped in honey. Let's keep it elegant, shall we? Her grip tightens, just slightly. No tearful tributes, okay? She continues. This isn't that kind of party. I stare at her, something cold sliding down the back of my throat. It's not going to be emotional, I say, but my voice feels paper thin. Just meaningful. She leans in a little, like she's sharing a secret. You know how people get when things get too earnest? It looks affectionate. From a distance, we're the picture of harmony, darling, she says lightly, voice dipped in honey. Let's keep it elegant, shall we? Her grip tightens, just slightly. No tearful tributes, okay? She continues. This isn't that kind of party. I stare at her, something cold sliding down the back of my throat. It's not going to be emotional, I say, but my voice feels paper thin. Just meaningful. She leans in a little, like she's sharing a secret. You know how people get when things get too earnest? It's your mother's night, Mara. Let's not shift the tone. We want people to feel uplifted, not burdened. Burdened. The word echoes. I nod. What else is there to do? She's already turned away, scanning the room like a queen surveying her court. Thank you for understanding, she adds, tossing it over her shoulder like a thank you mint. I stand there for a long second, clutching the mic stand like it's a lifeline. She doesn't want a speech. Not because it would ruin the event, but because it might reveal a truth too messy for her version of perfection. She's always been afraid of cracks, even when they're the only way the light gets in. As she glides back into the crowd, someone hands her another flute of champagne. She accepts it with a graceful nod, already slipping into another anecdote. Another performance. I walk back toward the kitchen, throat tight. She doesn't want me to speak, but I'm going to anyway. By the time dinner is served, the ballroom is a kaleidoscope of candlelight and clinking glassware, silk gowns and careful small talk. It smells like truffle oil and power. Every table is full. Every seat a name. The hum of conversation hovers just below the music. Smooth jazz, just loud enough to feel curated. And through it all, Eloise moves like royalty. She's doing the circuit now. Stopping at each table, hand lightly brushing a shoulder, a well-timed laugh, a memory from Aspen or Paris or wherever the last glossy chapter of her curated life unfolded. People lean in when she speaks. They touch her arm like she's good luck. No one looks at me. And that's not new. I take my seat at the far end of table 3, tucked between a distant cousin who keeps checking his watch and a woman whose name tag reads Nina, Board of Education but who hasn't made eye contact once. I stir my water with the end of my knife. Across the room, my mother lifts her glass in a delicate toast. Nothing formal, just a spontaneous gesture. The table bursts into laughter before the glass even reaches her lips. That's her real gift, controlling the mood, making people feel chosen. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for someone to notice I exist beyond the catering spreadsheet. My gaze drifts to the gift table in the corner, now overflowing with glossy bags and sleek envelopes. Nestled between a bouquet of long-stemmed lilies and a bottle of imported wine, my scrapbook sits flat and silent, wrapped in simple linen paper with a small ivory card on top. To the real hostess, it says. No one's opened it yet. I sip my water and try to breathe. I feel the weight of the room, not just the bodies, but the eyes, watching each other, not me. People trained to recognize value only in shine, in stagecraft. I think of the speech in my clutch, the card growing damp in my palm again. I could just not do it. I could disappear like always. Slip out during dessert, drive home, let the silence settle back over me like a weighted blanket. But something in me resists. Not defiance exactly, more like ache. I want one moment that's mine. One breath where the room stills, not for my mother's punchline or a toast from a client, but for a truth that doesn't need polish to matter. But for a truth that doesn't need polish to matter. I look at the microphone, now unmanned near the edge of the stage, and I swear it glows. They may not be looking yet, but they will. I waited until everyone was seated for the first course, some sort of beet carpaccio stacked like a sculpture, before I slipped away from my table. The gift table sat like a forgotten shrine in the far corner of the ballroom, behind a column wrapped in fairy lights and faux ivy. It overflowed with decadence, sleek gift bags stuffed with designer tissue paper, a wrapped bottle of Louis XIII, a leather-bound volume of something expensive and unreadable. A symphony of thoughtlessness. I pulled the scrapbook from my clutch slowly, careful not to wrinkle the edges. The linen wrapping was plain by comparison, the card tied with a simple piece of cream ribbon. But it was heavier than any of the boxes stacked around it. I stared at it for a second. Not for drama, not for doubt, for reverence. And then I placed it carefully in the center of the table. Not buried, not pushed to the side, front and center, where it belonged. The card on top was handwritten, block letters so there'd be no mistaking it. To the real hostess. I stepped back and stared at it like it might explode. It didn't, of course. It just sat there. Quiet. Like me. But it radiated something. Truth, maybe? Or proof. Evidence of a life lived in service and silence, finally being set down. I turned and walked away before anyone could ask questions or lift the ribbon. As I slipped back to my table, my heart beat a little louder than the jazz trio's brushed snare. No one looked up. No one noticed. But I had planted something. Not a confrontation. A seed. It might be ignored. It might even be discarded. But it was there. And soon, I'd speak the words to match it. The clink of silverware fades as the dessert plates are cleared. A few guests stand to stretch their legs, their laughter feathering through the air like static. I rise from my seat with my clutch in hand, the weight of the index card pressing against my palm like a dare. My legs feel distant, like I'm wading through invisible water as I make my way toward the stage. The mic squeals slightly when I test it. People turn, polite and curious, a few eyebrows arching. I smile, a tight, practiced version, and clear my throat. Hi, I say. My voice sounds thinner than I meant it to, but it holds. Most of the room quiets, not all. A server clinks a tray behind the bar. Someone coughs. I know tonight is about my mother, and it should be. She's remarkable. That part lands well. A few heads nod. Eloise smiles from table 1, the expression fixed in place like a diamond clasp. But I wanted to share something small, I continue, steadying, something personal. About family and the quiet things we do for each other when no one's watching. A ripple moves through the room. Attention wavers, polite, but unsure. My grandmother used to say, "It's not the grand gestures that hold us together. It's the small, invisible ones, the forgotten rides, the quiet waiting rooms, the meals reheated twice." A few guests glanced toward each other, mildly confused. I pushed forward. She believed in showing up. Even when it wasn't convenient. Even when it meant you stood in the background. My eyes scanned the tables, landing on the corner where I left the scrapbook. I made something for tonight. A collection of those quiet moments. Years of showing up. It's not flashy, but it's real. And I've placed it on the gift table. Not as a tribute, but as a record. My voice is steadier now, almost strong. And in her memory, I continue. I'd like to invite you, instead of bringing gifts, to contribute to a small grant in her name, for caregivers who carry burdens that often go unseen. I pause. Let it land. The silence is soft, not stunned. Just hesitant. There's a polite murmur from the back, a clink of forks, the sound of someone shifting in their seat. I glance down at my card for the closing line, but before I can speak again, I catch the sharp glint of movement. My mother is rising. Her smile is as tight as her posture, and suddenly the mic doesn't feel like a lifeline. It feels like a countdown. My daughter has always been sentimental, Eloise says, stepping onto the stage with a laugh light enough to float. The room shifts, grateful for the cue. Laughter ripples across the tables. The tension breaks, not because it's gone, but because she told them it should. I don't move, I can't. She rests a hand gently on my back, the kind of touch that looks maternal in photos but feels like a hook pulling me off stage. We do love a good tribute, she continues, turning back to the crowd with the ease of someone accepting an award. But let's not bore our guests with too many tears tonight, hmm? The line lands. Right on cue. More laughter. A few claps. The spell is broken. I lower the mic. She never asked me to. She didn't have to. That was lovely, Mara, she says, now only to me, her voice dipped in silk. Very heartfelt. I nod, throat burning. My mouth wants to say something, anything, but my body has already decided. I step down. Applause follows her now as she launches into the real program. A toast with rehearsed anecdotes and sparkling half-truths. Everyone leans in again, relieved to be back in her glow, safe from discomfort. I return to my table in a fog, the cards still clutched in my hand like a useless map. No one meets my eyes. The scrapbook sits unopened. And somewhere deep inside me, something small and tired folds its hands in its lap and goes quiet again. I had spoken. And still, somehow, I hadn't been heard. The hum returns, but it's changed. There's a new current in the air. Softer, sharper. The way a breeze shifts right before a storm. I hear my name before I hear anything else. Mara always needs a moment, someone says, half laughing. It's just her thing. I turn slightly, not enough to be noticed, but enough to see them. My cousin Lily, swirling wine in her glass, whispering behind her hand to another cousin whose name I can't even remember. They're both in high heels, too tall for sincerity. She made it about herself, the other says, and they both giggle like they're 13 again. The same giggle they used when I brought store-bought cupcakes to a bake sale in 7th grade, and they told everyone I didn't know how to bake. Only now I'm not 13. I'm 36, and it still stings. Someone brushes past me with a plate of pet fours. Another server asks if I'd like coffee. I say no, even though I do. I want something, anything, to hold. But not from them. I walk slowly to the side of the room where the light's dimmer and lean against the wall like furniture. Eloise is back at the center of it all, describing the vintage champagne someone sent her with a laugh that tinkles like a wind chime. She doesn't mention the scrapbook, she doesn't mention the speech. It's as if the interruption never happened. Except for the way the room now pulses with the kind of sympathy that's shaped like pity. She means well. She tries, she's just sensitive. That last one hits like a dart, even though it's said with a shrug from a man I don't recognize, someone probably from her garden club, or maybe an old neighbor. Someone who's known me as background noise for years. I want to scream. Just to see if it would cut through the soft-spoken dismissal. Just to prove I'm still in the room. But I don't. I just stand there, a living ghost at the party I planned, shrinking into the wallpaper like I always have. Except this time, I had dared to speak. And they decided it was noise. The restroom smells like roses and lemon cleaner. It's too bright in here, the kind of light that shows everything. Every crease, every flaw, every mistake. I lock the door behind me and slide the bolt until it clicks. The sound too loud in the silence. The moment it does, I crumble. I lean both hands on the marble sink, staring down at the faucet like it might say something comforting. Water drips in quiet intervals. My breath hitches. Then I look up. My reflection is a stranger. Eyes rimmed in red, mascara smudged into bruises beneath my lashes, cheeks flushed with something too complex to name. Shame, maybe? Or grief? Or just the slow unraveling of hope? Why do I keep trying? I whisper to the mirror. It doesn't answer. I think of the card in my clutch, still damp from my palm. Of the scrapbook sitting untouched, the ribbon still tied. Of my mother's smile as she pulled the mic away from me. Sweet, soft, deadly. I hear Lily's voice again in my head. She always needs a moment. As if care is vanity. As if vulnerability is attention-seeking. They laugh at me like I chose this. Like I want to be this soft. But I don't. I just am. I sink onto the edge of the clawfoot tub, arms wrapped tight around my ribs. My breath stutters in and out, shallow and sharp, like I'm trying not to wake something asleep inside me. I think about Grandma. I think about her hands on mine, the letter she wrote. Her saying, "You don't have to be the quiet one forever." But maybe I do. Maybe this is who I am. Background noise and sequins, a steady hum they don't notice until it stops. And what would happen if it did stop? If I just stopped caring? Stopped planning, managing, catching every plate before it shattered? Would they even feel the silence? I stare at the floor tiles, waiting for the answer. Nothing comes. Only the drip of the faucet. Only my own breath, and the knowledge that no one has come looking for me. No one ever does. I return to the ballroom with swollen eyes and a blank expression. No one notices. They're too busy fussing over flourless cake and espresso service, passing around tiny silver forks and conversation about weekend properties and mutual funds. I float among them, invisible and heavier than ever. Then I hear it. "Excuse me," a voice says near the front doors, deep and clear, cutting through the static of laughter. "I'm looking for Mara Ellison." The name hangs in the air like a bell. Heads turn. The pianist fumbles a chord. I feel the shift. Like the room has finally noticed I'm still here. A man in a navy suit stands at the entrance, holding a leather briefcase and an envelope. His posture is precise, his tone practiced. "I'm here on behalf of Josephine Carter, Mara's grandmother," he says. That stops everything. Eloise, halfway through a laugh, stiffens in her seat. The corners of her smile twitch downward, then freeze. "I was instructed to deliver this," the man continues, stepping forward slowly, "only in the event that Mara chose to speak tonight." A low murmur circles the tables. Someone gasps, audibly. "I think it might be Aunt Cecilia." The man approaches me, his eyes kind but unreadable. "May I?" I nod, barely. He opens the briefcase, removes a thick envelope labeled in delicate, unmistakable script, only to be opened when Mara speaks. My breath catches. I recognize the handwriting. Every loop and curve. It's hers. The man opens it carefully. Unfolding a document with reverence, "This is a legal declaration, signed and notarized by Josephine Carter," he says. "It pertains to caregiving services rendered by Mara Ellison, as well as an agreement made by Eloise Ellison." Now the room is silent. He opens the briefcase, removes a thick envelope labeled in delicate, unmistakable script, only to be opened when Mara speaks. My breath catches. I recognize the handwriting. Every loop and curve. It's hers. The man opens it carefully. Unfolding a document with reverence, "This is a legal declaration, signed and notarized by Josephine Carter," he says. "It pertains to caregiving services rendered by Mara Ellison, as well as an agreement made by Eloise Ellison." Now the room is silent. Utterly, perfectly silent. He clears his throat and begins to read. The following document, the notary says, unfolding the pages with deliberate care, was signed 6 years ago by Josephine Carter, Mara Ellison, and Eloise Ellison. It outlines the caregiving responsibilities provided by Mara during Mrs. Carter's final years of life. He glances at the crowd, now holding their collective breath. Forks hover mid-air, glasses tremble slightly on linen. "In it," he continues, "Mara formally agreed to provide unpaid medical and emotional support during her grandmother's illness, under the condition that Eloise Ellison would publicly acknowledge that service at an event of significance." My heart pounds so hard I feel it in my teeth. "She did this," the notary says, looking directly at Eloise now, Because Josephine feared Mara's contributions would be forgotten. Buried under logistics and silence, there's a sound from my mother's table. A fork clinks to the floor. Eloise has gone completely still, lips parted, color draining from her face beneath the expertly blended blush. He reads on. The contract was witnessed and sealed. A simple request that Eloise Ellison, at a gathering where she was honored, would publicly thank her daughter for the years she carried this family behind the scenes. Gasps ripple across the room. My knees lock. And per this agreement, he concludes, holding up the final page, this moment, Mara speaking, was the trigger for disclosure. Josephine instructed me to wait until her granddaughter found the courage to step forward. And if that day came, I was to read this out loud. Silence. No one moves. No one breathes. The ballroom, once full of champagne and charm, now holds only the weight of truth. Not polished, not posed, real. I feel every set of eyes on me now, not with pity, not with ridicule, with recognition. Because suddenly, the invisible threads I've woven for years, rides, meals, calendars, comfort, have a shape, a name. And my mother, still sitting frozen in her silver throne, has none. Eloise doesn't rise, she doesn't smile. For the first time all evening, her poise slips. She reaches for her wineglass with fingers that tremble but doesn't drink. Her eyes stay locked on the document in the notary's hand, like it's something dangerous she thought she buried long ago. I didn't think she'd ever bring it up, she says suddenly. Her voice is barely above a whisper, but the room is so still it carries. The notary steps back, his part finished. All eyes turn to her now. Eloise stands slowly, gripping the edge of her table to steady herself. The silver sequins on her gown don't sparkle anymore. They shimmer like something fragile, cracking. I never honored it, she admits. No flourish, no reframe, just the words, raw and bare. I was afraid, she says, her voice faltering. Afraid that if I acknowledged her strength, I'd lose control of this family. She turns to me then, and her expression is nothing I've ever seen before. Not maternal, not polished, just human. She carried me, Eloise says, eyes welling. She carried all of us. Quietly, constantly, and I let her carry my silence too. A sound escapes from the crowd, someone sobs. Soft and sharp, like the first raindrop in a drought. Eloise's lip quivers, she presses a trembling hand to her chest. I'm sorry, she says, and it's not rehearsed, not perfect, just honest. And for the first time in my life, it's enough to stop the room. No applause, just stillness. And then, one person claps. Then another. And another. Until the whole room is standing. Clapping not for her. For me. For the girl who was never supposed to speak. And did. Senety, 16, title, Spontaneous Apology. Characters, Mara Ellison, Eloise Ellison, guests clothing. Mara still in her blue dress, hair slightly tousled. Eloise, visibly shaken, in silver location, center of the ballroom. Summary, overcome with emotion. Eloise steps forward, takes the mic from the notary, and offers a public apology. Vulnerable, unscripted, and long overdue. Unscripted and long overdue. The room listens, this time without looking away. The applause fades slowly, like a tide pulling back, and in its place, silence. Waiting. Eloise walks to the mic with steps less graceful than before. She doesn't glide this time. She moves like someone walking barefoot across glass. She takes the microphone with both hands. Her voice shakes before it finds its footing. I've spent a lifetime curating moments, she says, making things appear beautiful, seamless, controlled. A pause. But that beauty came at a cost I never paid myself. Mara did. She glances toward me, and this time her eyes don't shine with performance. They shine with something rawer, wetter. She stayed late to clean up the messes no one saw. She drove, cared, carried. And I let her. Not because she asked to, but because I was afraid to let people see how human I really was. The room doesn't move. Even the servers have stopped mid-motion, napkins half-folded, pitchers still in their hands. I wanted people to believe we were perfect, Eloise continues, And perfection doesn't leave space for gratitude. Her voice cracks on the next line. But she deserved all of it. A breath, a tremble, and I'm sorry. Not just for forgetting, but for pretending she could carry silence without it breaking her. The room exhales. It's not polished, it's not tidy, but it's true. She turns toward me, the mic still in her hand, and steps down from the stage. Then, without a word, she holds the microphone out to me. This time, not to interrupt. To return. My fingers close around the microphone. It feels different now. No longer heavy like a burden, but balanced. As if it finally belongs in my hand. I glance out at the room. No one's talking. No one's glancing at their phones or tilting toward gossip. They're looking at me. Seeing me. I didn't plan to say much more, I begin, my voice calm even. But I think maybe I was always meant to finish. A few heads nod, no murmurs. Just attention. I loved my grandmother deeply, I continue. She saw what I did when others didn't. She reminded me that care isn't weakness, that the quiet work matters. I see a tear trail down the cheek of someone near the back, a woman I don't even know. So tonight, I say, glancing toward the gift table, I'm not asking for presents, I'm asking for something better. If you feel moved, I've created a small donation fund, in her name, to support caregivers who are doing what I did, often unpaid, often unnoticed, often alone. I take a breath, not because I need one, but because I want to savor the moment. And maybe, I say softly, we can start to see them before it's too late. The room doesn't clap right away. It just breathes with me. And then, gently, sincerely, they begin. No burst of forced applause, no saving face, just people clapping because they understand, because the invisible became visible. And they saw me finish. It started slowly. One woman came forward, clutching a crumpled tissue in one hand and a check in the other. I took care of my father for 6 years, she said. Thank you for saying what I never could. Then, a man I didn't recognize pulled me into a hug so gentle it felt like forgiveness. You held your family together, he whispered. And you still do. The donation jar. Just a simple glass bowl wrapped in ribbon began to fill. Cash, checks, a gold bracelet, someone unclasped right off her wrist. Eloise stood beside me, silent, watching. For the first time, she didn't speak for me. She just stood there, letting the weight of my presence settle over the room. Then someone? Aunt Cecilia, I think? Picked up the scrapbook from the gift table. She untied the ribbon, peeled back the cover, and began reading aloud, page by page. She did all of this? Someone asked. She never said a word, said another. But the more they read, the more the room softened. The silence shifted. Not awkward anymore, not performative, just reverent. They passed the scrapbook from table to table. People lingered on the photos. Some gasped at the lists, the calendar entries, the hospital wristbands taped to the corners like relics. She was the real hostess, someone murmured. And this time, no one corrected them. I sat down eventually, my legs too shaky to keep standing, but they still came. Not out of politeness, but because they saw something. Someone. And for once, it was me. The ballroom is nearly empty now. Just a few guests lingering near the doors, their laughter hushed, their shoes in hand. A server sweeps crumbs from beneath the dessert table, humming faintly to himself. I sit on the edge of the stage, my heels off, my dress rumpled. I don't care. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm fading. I feel present. Eloise steps toward me slowly. Her hands are bare now, the ring slipped off, the lipstick faded from too many forced smiles. She doesn't have the same shine she wore earlier. And that's good. She stops a few feet away, then sits beside me without a word. For a while, we say nothing. Just breathe in the same silence. Then, softly, she says, I want to learn how to do what you do. I turn to her. What do you mean? She looks down at her hands. Hold things together. Show up when it's not about being seen. Make people feel cared for without needing to be the center of it. I blink, not because I doubt her, but because this is the first time she's ever spoken to me like this, as someone she doesn't already understand. I didn't know how, she says. I still don't. I've only ever known how to perform. I nod slowly. I know. We sit there, two women in too much makeup and too few words, watching the last of the guests step out into the night. I'd like to help with the foundation, she adds. Quietly, if that's okay. It is. It will be. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm carrying both of us. We sit together until the lights begin to dim, not as mother and daughter, not as giver and taker, just as women, learning, at last, how to be real. The night air kisses my skin as I step outside. Cool. Quiet. Real. I stand beneath the archway of the venue, shoes dangling from one hand, my clutch in the other. The city hums in the distance, headlights washing the pavement in soft gold as cars sweep by. Behind me, the ballroom sleeps. The last of the lights flicker out. The echo of voices, music, performance? It all feels far away now. Not gone, but behind me. I press my back against the stone column and tilt my head toward the sky. No stars, just the glow of street lamps and the occasional plane slicing through the dark. But it's enough. It's real. I think about what Grandma would say if she were here now. About how long it took me to open my mouth. To choose visibility. To decide, finally, that being quiet didn't mean I had to be small. Tonight didn't fix everything. It didn't rewrite the past. But it cracked something open. I was seen, heard, and maybe even understood. That's enough, for now. I reach into my clutch and pull out the index card, edges soft from the night's heat, the ink just slightly blurred. I read the last line again. Let's not forget the ones who kept the lights on when the party was over. I smile, just a little. Because now, they won't. And neither will I. I drop the card into my clutch, slip my shoes back on, and start walking toward the street. Each step light, certain. Not quiet, just grounded. And this time, I'm not disappearing. I'm arriving.